Hey, Dr. Dan here. Today's video I wanted to talk about the relationship between rhetoric and music, which is something that I've studied very deeply. It was the topic of my dissertation when I completed my PhD in rhetoric and technical communication. That's called On the Digital Political Topography of Music. And it's something I revisit frequently. It's something that's important to my research and branches into other pieces of what I look at in terms of, say, rhetoric and forms of digital distribution, and it's where a lot of my ideas kind of came from. And I've been a musician most of my life, and this was this is an important area for me. So it's this bringing together of, say, musicology and rhetoric, and also looking at I've looked into the historical relationship between rhetoric and music, and it's fascinating, right? The ancient Greek philosophers understood the persuasive power of music. Quintilian has this hypothetical legal case where he talks about a flute player playing in the wrong mode, and the attending priest at the sacrifice jumps off a cliff. And you go through the ancient texts and you realize that, of course, ancient thinkers in the Western tradition understood the power of music to, say, even move the soul. For the ancient Greeks, in some of the texts, it's more about aligning the soul in a right kind of manner. And of course, say, the wrong kinds of music can malalign the soul or misalign the soul, say. So they understood it, but they never formalized. Maybe they did. Maybe the texts are just lost or forgotten or burned up in the fire at the Library of Alexandria. We don't know. I'm not an archival historian in that way. That would be, I would like to collaborate with others on that, maybe trace out some of those. Well, we know the ancient Greeks had a very early system of musical notation on pottery, different than what we have today. You fast forward to the Baroque period, when rhetoric was formalized in education systems. At the time, the Baroque composers understood rhetoric, and in the composition of fugues thought about rhetoric and moving the emotions. And then my contribution was to say, well, maybe music persuades us beyond just our emotions, and certainly that seems to be the case. It can incite us to move our bodies. It can carry important political themes, like we saw in the resurgence of the folk movement in the, say, 50s and 60s in the US. And there's a number of complicated legal battles that go around with the ownership of music and who owns music and copyrights. And I'm not a lawyer, but those things interest me too, and are part of this debate. So this is a little bit of a rambling video about why I care about these topics and some of the things I'm thinking about in terms of the relationship between rhetoric and music, and what I would say is one of the major areas of my research. And it's also to demonstrate kind of how, well, you look at Aristotle and understand that rhetoric doesn't have a necessary subject, right? Rhetoric is useful in a number of different domains, and so I like to think about the persuasive power of music. And also, having been a musician for many years, I think about it also applied in terms of, like, okay, what kind of album artwork is going to have the greatest, using, say, visual rhetoric tied into the marketing of music and stage presence. And I've published pieces on phenomenology in music. But today I wanted to talk about some of these issues with I guess what's on my mind is public domain music, because I'm starting a little research project collecting public domain songs and learning some of them. And I just picked out on my banjo this afternoon. It's called, Leadbelly popularized it. There's a recording. Take This Hammer, Take This Hammer. So that's a public domain song, which means that anyone can use it, perform it, right? So venues now, when I play music live, a lot of venues will make sure that you're not playing copyrighted music. It's either original compositions or public domain. And then you've seen these really high-profile legal cases where there's disputes about rhythm sections being copied and melodies being copied, and some of it's really wild and dangerous, right? I mean, how can you, like, at what level of the musical composition can you copyright it? Most music popular music, folk music, it follows these, especially look at rock songs, it's like the 1-4-5 chord progression, and it's 90% of music. You got your G, C, D, back to C or something, some variety of that, variation on that. And there's philosophical questions there too. It's like, are there an infinite number of melodies? I suppose. That's a different one. That's a different question to think about. But okay, so I've been looking at, I'm learning some public domain songs, and there are a few good resources out there that have started to archive public domain songs, which means they're not copyrighted. And rightfully, this is inject my opinion here. It's like music belongs to the people, right? Everyone should sing and use their voice and use music to express their, say, grief or sorrow or happiness, joy, to use it usefully. Right now, I think even there's a good case for, I want to say, like repurposifying our folk music. This whole like Fleet Foxes, Bon Iver kind of pop folk music is missing what used to be this kind of significant function of folk music, which was to, say, band people together around a cause or something like that. But that's another video too. So I've been looking at these public domain songs, and there are a couple good archives out there. There's PD Info. So in this kind of community of people who care about folk music and nerd out about it and research it and archive it, PD is the abbreviation for public domain, which means it's accessible to everyone. It's not copyrighted, it's not copyrightable, it belongs to everyone, right? These songs belong to everyone. And so you can look at, there's another one, Rocky, I think it's called Rocky Top Center, something like that. This individual has archived about 3,000 public domain songs, and PD Info is another nice archive online that you can look at some of these. But it gets really messy the more you look into it, because some proper, say, folk songs of America come from long old melodies that came from Europe, right, before we were here in the U.S. I was here, my family lineage. Some of these melodies have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're difficult to trace. We don't have, say, like we have in in linguistics, we have the study of etymology, the history of the origin of words. We don't really have an academic discipline that studies the history of melodies. That would be something, if I had tons of grant money and time, I would probably like to do something like that. Now, especially with software assisted, doing something like, we have really nice sonic recognition software where you can match melodies and songs up. But so what happened, especially in the U.S. in like the 40s, 50s, into the 60s, is there was this kind of cash grab where the Carter family is really notorious for this, going off into the mountains, collecting folk songs and copywriting them. So say songs that should properly belong to the public domain and to the people are now owned by artists or producers or production companies or, say, publishing companies, choose your battle, right? Or individual songwriters. Things like I'll Fly Away, that you may know from the really nice Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, right? It was kind of repopularized there. I think Alison Krauss and Gillian Welch did that rendition in that film. But so there's countless songs that say should belong to the public domain, to the people of the world if they would like to sing them, that for hundreds of years did belong to whoever would like to play them and sing them. And then with this kind of rise of these large record companies and song publishing companies went up for grabs. And so now these songs, it's like if you want to do if you want to legally publish or post even, say, a video of I'll Fly Away, and you want to do it through the proper channels, you would have to pay a royalty or purchase a license to do that through the publishing company. And that's fairly problematic, right? Songs that, for hundreds of years families passed down and and were played in communities, and maybe even traveled overseas and through these long journeys. Songs that helped people overcome hard times, songs that brought people together, songs that were enjoyed and played together by groups and communities now belong, say, to private entities when this never should have happened. It's something interesting to think about. I'm doing more of this kind of research, not that this is a new concept to me, but really more seriously, say, looking at what is available in the public domain in terms of American folk music, and maybe we, kind of shifting our definition of what folk is a little bit. I don't, when I refer to folk music, I don't think of it as like a genre of acoustic instruments and vocal harmonies and that sort of thing. I'm thinking more of a broader conception of folk as music that belongs to, say, everyone, music that can be shared and sung by everyone. And it's problematized now, and I think we really lose something by that. I do. I think we lose something by not having. It's difficult, though. It's difficult to put exactly what this is. We lose cultural touchstones, touch points. We lose that kind of shared, a kind of, say, shared metaculture. We lose, say, the freedom to use these melodies. And we lose touch, say, with that important oral and sonic auditory tradition that we have. More thought needed here, and it's not exactly my claim or my case, but some important topics nonetheless. This is just kind of a primer video into where I'm thinking. So for quite a few years now, I've been looking at the relationship between rhetoric and music and tracing back its ancient origins and what did people say about it and think about it and write about it, and then trying to rethink how music is persuasive now, and then especially really looking at some of these, say, the influences of the corporatization and the commodification of music, and how's it sold and distributed, and how do people find music and play music and use music in the world, and to what end, and often thinking about, say, how is it appropriated in political circumstances, which is really slippery and tricky. You look at say, what the Nazi Party did and with Ode to Joy, and it's also now that same piece, that iconic melody is, I don't know if this is true to date, but for a while at least was kind of the unofficial anthem of the European Union. And so it's like, it's tough to think about, like, what is the inherent persuasive, tricky. What is the, say, inherent ideology of that music? Well, maybe it's not anything. Maybe it's too slippery, but maybe it does kind of have a logical function. Maybe in this case it is just the pathos. I don't know. I'm going to end there because that's enough for today. But thinking again, I'll be posting more videos in a kind of mini series, I think, about the relationship between rhetoric and music, and introducing some key thoughts that I've had, and some pointing to some key texts along the way that I've looked at that have informed my thinking, and pushing this forward into the contemporary too, now with streaming services and YouTube monetization and the different ways that people publish and prepare and record and use music in the world. It's very interesting. So if you like these videos, take a moment to subscribe, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.